Hey, I work with a lot of golfers on a weekly basis, and I can say that the golf swing honestly comes down to two major things. It comes down to the pivot, and it comes down to the release of the club head. Most golfers who come to see me, they have a big issue with one or the other, or quite often it's both. In fact, if you're a good club golfer out there and you're, let's say, somewhere between a 5 and a 15 handicap, there's a really good chance that you're making errors in both the pivot and the release that are helping kind of balance each other out. You've kind of figured them out over the years just by hitting balls and going with the feedback from the ball flight, and you figured out kind of a way to balance it all out, but you've hit a plateau. You don't know how to get any better, and you don't know how to hit it any farther either. So right after this, I want to talk about how the pivot and release go together to give you all the distance and accuracy you could ever hope for, ever dream of. And hopefully understanding these concepts a little bit better is going to make you hit longer, straighter, and lower your handicap coming up this year. Hey, this is Steve with HitItLonger.com. If you want more content like this, I hope you'll like and subscribe. Okay, so once we define what each idea does, each concept, the pivot and the release, what they do, you're going to be able to identify some or troubleshoot the issues you might have with your swing. So first, we're talking about the pivot. Now, I define the pivot as causing the handle of the club to advance around the circle. So imagine this club is in a CAD program, it's on a computer screen, and there's no body attached to it. All you would have then is you would just simply have the path of the handle, the route of the handle, and the forces being applied to the grip. That's how simple a golf swing really is. Take the body away. So we're just looking for the activity of the club itself. Now the pivot, in my view, causes the handle of the club to move around the circle. Something like this. If I were to hook my arm like this and not let it move out of this socket, kind of up, almost like I'm in a sling or a straitjacket. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Now, I can't move it. The only way I can move this is by rotating my torso and driving my pivot, something like this. Now, I've got to keep going with my shift and turn until the handle of the club has gotten to my intended low point. And for me, I'd like my low point to be just inside my left instep. Now let's look at how that's going to work on an iron. We know with an iron, you've got to hit the ground in front of the ball and make your divot in front of the ball to hit the ball cleanly and get clean compression on this thing. Most of you out there, just like most of my students, they simply do not make a correct enough or a big enough pivot to force the handle of the club to advance, in this case with the 9-iron, past the ball 3 to 4 inches. We've got to get the handle across this imaginary line on the ground. We'll define that with the yellow stick here. Let's do that again with the yellow stick. I'm going to pivot and turn. Notice that my arm has not advanced relative to my chest. I'm just turning. Now, you can see the handle of my club is a few inches past the stick, and it's going to ensure that I hit down on the ball and strike the ball first and then the turf second. So, if you are having issues hitting behind the ball, it's probably because you're having issues advancing the handle with your pivot. Now, that's not to mean that a lot of you out there aren't getting the handle in front and striking it correctly, but you're doing it without a proper pivot, which means you are sacrificing your release to do it. This is why you're getting poor distance off the tee, not the distance and accuracy that you would like. Again, the role of the pivot is to advance the handle of the club around its arc, around the circle, you could say, just like that. I need to keep going until the handle is well past the ball, almost to my left instep. And now you see I am guaranteed forward lean, clean contact. Wow, that felt amazing. Beautiful downstrike, incredible compression. Got to get the pivot going to do that. The pivot has got to cause the trunk to rotate. Look at it from this angle. So the rump's got to stay back. The hip flexion's got to stay maintained, and that will allow the body to go around and advance the handle as you shift your weight from foot to foot. So one more, we'll do a kind of an L to L swing here. To cause the handle of the club to be here, in front of the ball, in front of the yellow stick, where I can hit the ball properly. Now, many of you out there have learned to cope with having a poor pivot. You might have a stand-up, an early extension. You might, your turn of your torso might stall. A lot of people complain that they just can't get their torso to keep going. They have pivot errors. They have errors in the hips and the maintenance of the angle of the bow, the inclination forward from the hips. So these people, they figure out how to hit in front of it anyway. Some people don't. Some people fail to advance far enough, either standing up, but not rotating enough and pivoting enough, and they fail to drive the left arm to the yellow line, which would make you scoop it, hit behind it, drop kick it, hit the irons very high and short, hit your driver very high with a lot of spin, this kind of thing. If your pivot is stalling out, your turn is stalling out, you won't be able to advance the handle far enough. But some of you figured out how to, a neat little trick. Now watch this. Here I am wound up, coming into it, my pivot stalls one way or another. Now, I can either do this and bottom out too early, or I can pull the handle in front. By letting go of the sling here, I can pull my way to making the handle of the club move ahead of the yellow line and therefore get a proper strike. However, this type of swing is going to be highly inefficient when it comes to creating distance and controlling the blade of the club. You're going to be gimped or handcuffed in your ability to get better with your ball striking. Your ball striking will be on the head of a pin from day to day, and you won't know if you're going to be hooking it all over the planet, slicing it all over the planet, or going straight. You also will get a very high rate of spin and very poor distance off the tee given your club head speed. So, sure, we can get this technique to cause the ball to be struck first, and that is important. But once you have the right pivot, all of a sudden, if I have enough pivot and I add this pulling of the handle, all of a sudden I'm in this position. The handle's too far ahead. It's making it virtually impossible to square the face. So I start missing high and right a lot. And of course, if you're a really smart guy and you're athletic, you're going to figure out how to flip the face over and make it work. So, pivot and release, the two major parts of the swing, when done efficiently, when done very well, they're going to allow you to be much more consistent from day to day, hitting it really long, really straight, and not having this super inconsistency that golfers with these habits will do. It's not a good idea for the long run for your batting average to go from here to here very quickly. But that's what happens when people start to pull. The smarter ones figure out then how to flip. So what are we going to do then if we can't pull? Well, if you can't pull, so there's a release with no pull. We get into the release, and I would term the release as causing, not advancing the handle. The release of the club head to me does not cause the handle to advance. In fact, it might even cause it to slow down or back up. However, it causes the head to circle around the handle. In fact, in this, you're even seeing me work the handle backwards, up the curve instead of into the ball. Now, of course, without the right pivot, you can see what would happen. I'm going to bottom out way behind it, top it, and probably hook it every time, or maybe chunk it really bad. So that was a great release, but didn't have a pivot to it. So again, most golfers, you've got major errors in one or the other, and often both. The better golfers, the errors will tend to balance out and allow you to play decent golf. 5 handicap, that's pretty good golf. Better than most people in the world. But you can be better when you get these concepts. Don't allow the handle of the club to advance from the arms pulling, but instead keep it in this nest back here, in this sling, and advance it. You want to see the guys who did this best. Look at the guys who hit the ball a long way while looking very undercoached and natural. I'll throw you 3 names at you. John Daly did this. Payne Stewart did this. Fred Couples did and still does this. Long hitters, effortless looking, not overly technical looking or undercoached. They look like they're just swinging a flail with gravity around them. That's how they're doing it. They're adhering to these 2 principles. Only allow the pivot to advance the handle. Therefore, you've got to really go around the corner to get this handle advancing ahead of the ball by the time you apply the release force to make the club come around and straighten up with your left arm. And that by itself would look like this. That would be a really good release. Just like that. Almost making my left arm back up deeper. So you add them both together. Now, both of those ideas look kind of goofy and wacky by themselves, but when you add them together, really comes together nicely. Now, I look like I probably took about a half swing and bunted the ball there. This is a 9-iron. But I got 140 yards carry out of that 9-iron just now, and it's right on the target too, within probably 5 or 6 feet of the target line. Perfect strike. Using those 2 principles, you can see how much speed and distance I'm able to get out of those principles. It's just only allow the handle to be advanced by the pivoting, rotating body this way. And throw the club head outwards, starting back here, and make it go around the handle 180 degrees, like this. Make that thing circle around the handle. In some cases, you might even be able to get 10 extra degrees here and 10 extra degrees here, make it go 200 degrees while the handle is advancing. You time them together. Some people will leave a dumb comment down below saying, well, how were you ever supposed to time that? Well, this is what baseball pitchers do. Step, throw. In golf, it's the same thing. Step, throw. They don't try to pull the arm to the target. They will step and turn it into the target, and they can hit the strike zone most every time. So keep these two concepts in mind next time you go to the range. You probably, if you're not improving as fast as you want, you have an error in one of these two ideas, either the pivot or the release. If it's in the pivot, you want to figure out what's causing you to not advance that handle around to get in front of the ball, and of course on an arc. Inside to square and back to the inside, the handle curves, and then make a pure throw of the club head. See what I'm doing here? I am not advancing the handle of the club as I try to throw the club head around it. I'm just pivoting the club head around the handle and almost trying to make the handle counter lever backwards or back up the arc. You'll hit the ball so much farther and straighter when you get better at these two concepts. This is what I mostly work on with my students, is improving one or the other, and sometimes pushing both. So hey, thanks for taking the time to watch. I'm Steve. Check out my website, hititlonger.com. Support the channel by hitting like, subscribe, leaving a comment down below, or just sharing this with somebody else, a golfer you know who would like to improve as well. So hopefully I will see you in the next video, but if not, I would like to see you hitting longer and straighter down the fairway. Everybody take good care.